Everyone thinks the RAM crisis hitting gaming right now is just a supply chain hiccup that'll sort itself out in a few months. But the numbers coming out of Mr. Hostboss's breakdown suggest something way darker is happening, and almost nobody outside the tech world is paying attention to it yet. Here's the detail that should terrify you. A single PlayStation 5 has 16 gigabytes of RAM. One AI chip, just one NVIDIA Blackwell Ultra, needs 288 gigabytes. That's the equivalent of 18 PlayStation 5's worth of memory crammed into a single chip. Now stack that. These chips don't get sold one at a time. They get sold in racks of 72, which means one rack alone equals 2,300 PS5's worth of memory. Microsoft's first major AI cluster last year used 64 of those racks in a single deployment. That's 83,000 PlayStation 5's worth of RAM, gone just to power one company's AI ambitions. And that's the small number. OpenAI's Stargate campus is reportedly going to hold 100 times that capacity. We're talking 8.3 million PlayStation 5's worth of memory sitting in one facility. That's not hyperbole, that's roughly enough memory to equip every single household in the entire continent of Australia. And Stargate isn't even the only player. Meta has Prometheus, xAI has Colossus, Amazon, Google. Every major tech company is racing into this same arms war for silicon. The collective result is that AI data centers are now swallowing up roughly 70% of the entire world's memory output. 70%. For an industry that barely existed in its current form 5 years ago. So think about what that means for everything else. Every phone, every laptop, every car, every gaming console, they're all now fighting over the leftover 30%. And that fight is exactly why your console is suddenly worth more money and delivers less value than it did last year. You'd assume the obvious fix is simple. Just make more memory, build more factories. Except the three companies that control the world's RAM supply, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, have zero incentive to do that right now. Building a new fabrication plant takes 3 to 4 years and costs tens of billions of dollars. If the AI bubble pops before those factories finish construction, these companies are left holding catastrophic losses. So instead, they're doing the rational business thing. Even if it's brutal for consumers, they're squeezing existing supply for maximum profit. These companies are currently pulling in 70 to 80% margins on memory, compared to the historical norm of 30 to 40%. Micron didn't even bother pretending otherwise. They quietly shut down Crucial, their entire consumer memory brand, just to focus exclusively on data center clients who will pay literally anything. And I mean anything. We're watching companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google behave in a way we haven't seen since the dot-com bubble, spending more money than they're even generating from AI, because losing the AI race has become scarier to them than accumulating debt. That's not a healthy market. That's a herd of billion-dollar companies sprinting off a cliff together, and gamers are getting trampled in the stampede. Let's put actual numbers on what this looks like at the register. Within just 3 months at the end of last year, the price of a single 16-gigabyte stick of RAM rose almost 300%. The CEO of Xbox has publicly stated that the price they're paying for console storage components is now over 2 times what they paid the previous fall, and that number has since doubled again. Looking ahead to the 2027 holiday season, they're bracing for prices to hit 5 times what they were paying just 2 years prior. 5 times. On some high-end graphics cards, the VRAM alone now accounts for up to 80% of the card's total manufacturing cost. Let that land for a second. The actual processing chip, the part NVIDIA spends billions engineering, now costs less than the basic memory soldered around it. This is why the PlayStation 5, a console that launched at $399, is now selling for $599, and it's 6 years old. Nintendo has already hiked Switch 2 pricing. Xbox has raised prices 3 separate times since 2025. And here's where it gets genuinely dystopian. At the exact same moment PlayStation is charging more, they announced they're ending physical disc production entirely. Coincidence? I don't buy it for a second. When you can't sell your game to a friend, can't trade it in, can't buy it used for a fraction of the price, every single copy has to come straight from Sony's own storefront at whatever price they decide to charge. That's not just a cost-cutting measure. That's a company positioning itself to control pricing with zero competition once physical media disappears completely. Consumer response has already shown up in the sales data. In May 2026, right after PlayStation's price hike, Americans bought fewer PS5s than in any May since the year 2000. Before the PlayStation 2 had even launched in America, Xbox had its worst May in the brand's entire history. And this problem isn't contained to gaming giants. One industry insider working with Windows handheld manufacturers reportedly said their products are effectively dead. No company is launching new handheld PCs if memory prices keep climbing like this. Even Valve, a company practically synonymous with consumer-friendly pricing, just released their Steam machine at over $1,000 for hardware that's barely more powerful than a 6-year-old PS5. So here's the part that should genuinely worry you if you're planning to buy a next-generation console. Rumors are circulating that the PlayStation 6 could launch at around $1, 2.5 times the launch price of the PS5. That sounds absurd until you realize the entire console business model depends on volume. Sony and Microsoft need to move tens of millions of units immediately at launch to convince developers their new platform is worth building for. If only 5 to 8 million people buy a PS6 in its first year, while 80 million people are still sitting comfortably on PS5s, which platform do you think developers will prioritize? The old one. Every time. That means less reason to ever upgrade. Which means the install base shrinks instead of growing, which means the entire console generation risks becoming a financial dead end before it even gets started. Here's where things start feeling genuinely coordinated instead of coincidental. If companies want to protect their profit margins while consumers are buying less, they have 4 levers to pull, and every single one of them screws the customer. First, subscription price hikes. Xbox already tried jacking up Game Pass pricing dramatically, got backlash, pulled back slightly, but it's still more expensive than before. Nintendo quietly raised online subscription costs in Japan months ago. Second lever, game prices themselves. $60 was the industry standard for 15 straight years, then it became $70 in 2020. Now we're staring down $80 releases, with some analysts predicting the $100 game arriving sooner than anyone wants to admit. Third lever, and this is the one that infuriates me the most: control. By killing physical discs, publishers aren't just saving on manufacturing costs, they're eliminating your ability to resell, trade, or lend games entirely. Right now on a PlayStation store, a flopped game like Immortals of Avium sells digitally for about $70. That exact same title is available physically, secondhand, for around $6. That price gap is the entire second-hand market disappearing in real time, and once discs are gone completely, there's no floor left on what publishers can charge you. Fourth lever, cost-cutting through layoffs. Xbox has already divested 5 major game studios and eliminated around 3,200 jobs, including reportedly half the team at id Software, the studio that literally invented the first-person shooter genre with Doom and Quake. Fewer talented developers means fewer ambitious games, which feeds directly into a cycle where the only titles that get greenlit are safe, low-risk, and creatively stagnant. And this is where things get controversial, because I don't think this crisis is purely accidental fallout from AI demand. When you have 3 companies controlling the entire global memory supply, and all three simultaneously decide to prioritize AI clients over consumers while raising prices in near-perfect coordination, that starts looking less like market forces and more like collusion. Samsung has actually been fined for price fixing before, back between 1998 and 2000, with executives facing real jail time. So the idea that these same companies might be quietly coordinating supply constraints to keep margins inflated isn't some wild conspiracy. It's a pattern with legal precedent. So what happens if this trajectory continues unchecked? There are three realistic paths forward, and honestly, none of them are good news for people who just want a game like they used to. Option 1. Cloud gaming becomes the default. Services like NVIDIA's GeForce now let you effectively rent the graphics power you can no longer afford to own, streaming games instead of running them locally. The service already has around 30 million registered users, and industry analysts are directly citing the memory shortage as one of the main drivers of that growth. But here's the disturbing part. NVIDIA has already implemented a 100-hour monthly playtime cap on paid GeForce Now accounts. Think about that phrase for a second. A corporation limiting how many hours you're allowed to enjoy your own hobby, because you don't actually own the hardware anymore. Option 2. Retro and older games become the norm, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. On PC right now, the majority of total playtime is already going toward games over 6 years old. A recent Tom's Hardware survey found 60% of PC enthusiasts don't plan on upgrading any hardware for at least the next 2 years. Option 3, and this one has real staying power, mobile gaming becomes the dominant platform by default. Smartphones remain a perceived essential in a way that consoles never will be. So as the affordability gap widens between phones and dedicated gaming hardware, developers will increasingly follow the money into mobile-first design. Now here's my honest take, and it's going to ruffle some feathers. I think the console business as we've known it for 30 years might genuinely be approaching its final form. Not because gamers stopped caring. Clearly they haven't. Given how loudly this backlash is playing out across every comment section attached to this story. But because the economics have fundamentally inverted. For 3 decades, hardware got cheaper over each generation while capability increased. That entire trajectory has now reversed, and I don't think that's temporary friction from a memory shortage. I think it's the beginning of a permanent shift, where owning dedicated gaming hardware becomes a luxury purchase reserved for enthusiasts with disposable income. While everyone else gets funneled into subscriptions, cloud streaming, and mobile ecosystems designed around monetization rather than ownership. And the thing that really gets under my skin is watching companies frame all of this as some unavoidable natural disaster instead of a series of deliberate business decisions. Nobody forced these RAM manufacturers to abandon consumer supply chains. Nobody forced Sony to announce disk elimination at the exact same moment prices were spiking. These are calculated choices made by executives who understood exactly how this would land on regular people and decided the profit was worth the backlash. The phrase getting repeated endlessly across every comment section right now is, "You'll own nothing and be happy." And whether or not you buy into where that phrase originally came from, it's landing with real weight because it perfectly describes what's happening to an entire hobby that millions of people grew up loving. So here's the question I keep circling back to. If the console industry survives this, and I do think it survives in some form, what does it actually look like on the other side? Does it come back leaner? More focused on genuinely great games instead of bloated AAA spectacle, forced by necessity to optimize instead of relying on brute force hardware? Or does it permanently transform into a subscription-locked, ad-supported, cloud-dependent version of what gaming used to be, where the concept of actually owning your library becomes something people explain to their kids like it's some ancient artifact from a lost era? Because based on everything unfolding right now, I genuinely don't think we know the answer yet. And that uncertainty might be the scariest part of this entire story.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe and hit the bell to the latest update from my channel. Thank you for watching till the end and see you in the next video.